All right. That's good. Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello and welcome to my little conference today where we'll be delving into an interesting subject since SecuriCon is known like an event which is about everything related to cloud and cybersecurity. So I thought, why not talk about a very interesting and challenging subject nowadays in 2024 globally about multi-cloud environments. So we'll be talking about securing this environment, some best practices and challenges. So today we gather to explore a critical aspect of modern IT infrastructure. We have seen a rise from businesses in demand requiring cloud infrastructures, but now they are taking another approach into multi-cloud environments. So the summary of today's conference, I'm really sorry, but due to the some sort of limited time, we'll try to be quick through these slides. So we'll start with an understanding about multi-cloud, security considerations, best practices, and challenges in terms of security in these environments, some sort of case studies and a couple of anonymized examples, and we'll finalize by future trends, considerations, and a conclusion. So Taher Amine ELHOUARI, I'm the founding president of OWASP Algiers chapter. I'm CISO Africa and head of global SecOps at a recent company that I joined just recently, Brandvact Group, and a member of OWASP Foundation, subject matter expert IC2. I hold a couple of industry certifications and so on. Well, you can find the whole resume in LinkedIn. So understanding multi-cloud. So in this session, we will navigate through these complexities of multi-cloud security, examining both the best practices and the challenges that accompany this dynamic landscape, from data fragmentation to compliance requirements and so on. We'll delve into these intricacies of safeguarding sensitive data and, let's say, mitigating cyber risks across diverse cloud environments. So as some of you might already know, multi-cloud refers to the deployment of different applications, workloads, and so on across different CSPs simultaneously. A CSP is a cloud service provider. So like you see in this picture, the top three CSPs in the world are Amazon, Google, and Microsoft Azure. So we have AWS, Azure, and GCP. So this approach of multi-cloud did offer flexibility, redundancy, and even scalability. But at the same time, for these businesses, it did introduce some sort of security challenges and security risks. So organizations may utilize, let's say, different deployment models, such as public cloud, hybrid, private, and so on. But through this multi-cloud approach, they do it alongside different cloud service providers. So the growth, in terms of growth and adoption trends, enterprises and organizations worldwide, especially in, let's say, mature markets like Europe and the United States, they are increasingly embracing these type of architectures of multi-cloud to leverage their strengths of using different vendors to avoid the vendor lock-in, what we call, as an example, in OWASP and the other organizations, vendor neutral, and also in order to optimize costs. So according to a couple of industry reports from different organizations like the CSA, the Cloud Security Alliance, the adoption of multi-cloud strategies has grown significantly in recent years, and it is projecting that there will be huge demand and another continuation of let's say, rising in these technologies. So organizations in different industries and sectors, whether it's finance, healthcare, military, oil and gas, and so on, most of them are migrating their workloads to multiple cloud platforms in order to obviously meet their business needs and their customer demands, and to handle appropriately their clientele demands. So apart from AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, there are some others like Oracle Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, and too many other cloud service providers. Now, the importance of security, especially in the world of multi-cloud, it is very paramount due to the distributed nature of resources. I mean, you can imagine, first of all, it is, let's say, it's complex, because you might imagine like dealing, well, or switching from on-premise infrastructures into cloud infras is something transformational, and then from cloud infrastructure into multi-cloud architecture. So things will get very complex, especially in terms of managing security controls across these different platforms, and also with the rise of different regulation and compliance requirements, the protection of, let's say, people's sensitive data is very important. So, like we all know, data breaches, cyber attacks, and compliance violations as well can have severe consequences for organizations, including financial losses, reputational damage, and even legal liabilities. Therefore, implementing robust security measures and adopting the best practices is very critical, especially in terms of multi-cloud environments. Now, let's talk a bit about some security considerations in these multi-cloud environments. Now, as we embark on our journey into this field of multi-cloud security, it is very essential to understand the landscape we are navigating. So these multi-cloud environments, like we have seen together, they introduce a myriad of security considerations, like I said in the beginning, from issues like data fragmentation to compliance challenges. So data fragmentation, as an example, for instance, it poses a significant challenge as data is distributed across multiple cloud platforms, across multiple regions, multiple countries, and so on. So making it very challenging to maintain something very important for CISOs, as an example, for Chief Information Security Officers, which we call visibility. Now, visibility and control is very hard to maintain in these environments. So meanwhile, ensuring compliance, which is another challenging issue with the regulatory requirements such as the GDPR, HIPAA, and so on, across disparate cloud providers adds another layer of complexity to the overall security equation or the security posture. So network complexity as well arises from managing connectivity, communication, and even data transfer between the different cloud service providers. So we can use or base on varied security controls across these providers, which might result from differences in security mechanisms, APIs, compliance standards, and so on, especially in terms of interoperability and integration efforts to ensure our consistent security posture. Now, data security and privacy concerns. I mean, it is very similar to on-prem infrastructures and on-premises architectures. I mean, our focus in information security as a whole is the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Well, we can add the new version of the non-repudiation and authenticity and so on, but the principle stays the same. So in terms of multi-cloud, it is also critical to ensure data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So enterprises, companies, organizations, and so on must implement robust encryption mechanisms like access controls, identity and access management, and so on, that we will delve into the next slides. And especially in terms of data classification as well, in terms of policies, in order to safeguard the sensitive information, like we all know from unauthorized access, alteration of data, data breaches, and so on. Data sovereignty is another issue in terms of cloud as a whole. So data sovereignty and compliance requirements further complicate data security in multi-cloud environments, as organizations have and must ensure compliance with their regional data protection laws. I mean, you can imagine dealing with different countries, companies from different countries. So let's say, as an example, you will be dealing with a company in Tunisia, another company in Algeria, another one in Europe, and another one in the United States. I mean, here we are dealing with 4 probably different laws and regulations. I mean, American regulations, European regulations, Algerian, Tunisian, and so on. So data privacy and data security as a whole, in terms of industry regulations inside these multi-cloud environments, is a big issue and a very challenging thing to do. So, like I said, compliance and regulatory requirements. We will see in the next slide a couple of very important, let's say, regulatory acts and compliance standards and so on. So, achieving compliance with industry regulations, some of the well-known like the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, the PCI DSS, and so on, and their contractual obligations in multi-cloud environment is very challenging, like we said. So, organizations have to ensure that their security measures, security controls, and security architectures align with relevant compliance standards in order to mitigate the legal and financial risks. So as an example here, we take a look at some compliance and regulatory requirements. Well, some of them I know they are more like, or let's say focused on IT as a whole, like the ISO 27001 for implementing information security management systems. But here we do have some others that shape the way that we implement these multi-cloud architectures or environments. We also have the well-known NIST CSF, the cybersecurity framework, alongside its RMF, the risk management framework. We have the GDPR, everybody knows about it. In Algeria, as an example, we have the 1807 law. It is very similar to the GDPR for protecting privacy and personal information of people. These impact our cloud strategies, especially in terms of multi-cloud, which gets more challenging. We have the Sarbanes-Oxley compliance, the HEPA, FISMA for the United States. We also have another interesting one in the United States, the FedRAMP, the Federal Risk Authorization Management Program. You might also deal with the business continuity management system based on the ISO 22301 and so many others like the CCPA of California, like the regulations in our brothers in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia through their CST, the Communication Space and Technology Commission, through their NCA, National Cybersecurity Authority. We do have other special publications of the National Institute for Standards and Technologies in the United States, and so many others. So compliance is a very huge issue, especially in cloud infrastructures, and you can imagine how challenging it is in multi-cloud environments. Now, we have seen a couple of challenges. We have introduced the multi-cloud, the different regulations. Now, what about, or let's talk about some best practices for multi-cloud security. So let's explore the foundational principles of multi-cloud security through implementing robust access controls and identity management mechanisms, or like we say them in the ISC2, the International Information System Security Certification Consortium. There is the UBK and CBK, the Unified Body of Knowledge and Core or Common Body of Knowledge. We call them EIM solutions, or the domain of EIM, the Identity and Access Management. So these solutions are very essential for enforcing granular access controls and identity management, while also managing user privilege and client privilege, while ensuring strong authentication mechanisms. We can do that through different systems like, well, I have seen, like most of you are IT students and security practitioners, so you are familiar with RBAC and ABAC, the role-based and attribute-based access controls, the least privilege principles, and so on. They all should be applied consistently to limit exposure of sensitive resources. We also have the SSO and the Federated Identity Management, which was raised in recent years, especially with the adoption of cloud technologies. We can also talk about, let's say, automation. Automation is very important in cloud security and even the multi-cloud architecture. So automation emerges as a key ally in streamlining security operations. I mean, it's very similar to having, as an example, a SOC on an on-premise infrastructure, like a security operations center. It is very similar, but in multi-cloud architectures, we have the advantage of using more advanced automation compared to on-premise systems due to its nature of technology and design and engineering and so on. So this will enable organizations to automate routine tasks such as vulnerability scanning, incident response, and ensuring the consistent enforcement of security policies across this whole cloud environment. We also have another important point, the encryption and key management. So encryption or cryptography, like everyone knows, it is very important for both data at rest and data in transit or in motion, using obviously strong cryptographic algorithms, whether it's the advanced encryption system or standard or the RSA or the others. This will help to mitigate the risk of data breaches and unauthorized access. I mean, most companies, like even the Fortune 100 companies of the world, got hacked a way or another. So even if cyber criminals manage to steal your clientele information and data, at least they steal it in an encrypted way, so you can at least ensure that the data isn't decrypted or deciphered and so on. So also, organizations should implement robust key management practices, such as having an HSM. Cloud service providers nowadays, most of them use hardware security module solutions alongside their key management services in order to ensure like the secure manner of generating, storing, and revoking encryption keys. We also have another very important aspect in terms of data privacy. Data masking, tokenization, and anonymization techniques further enhance data privacy and protection. If some of you have worked with the PCI DSS implementation or audits, the payment card industry data security standard, I mean, you must be familiar with data masking and tokenization and so on. This will help reduce the impact of potential security incidents and also data breaches. Now, another important aspect is building strong security foundation. I mean, it is the same thing that we do on on-premise infrastructures, and in normal cloud, we can do it also in multi-cloud environments. So another important aspect is continuous monitoring and threat detection. Now we are talking about proactive cybersecurity. It's not only about having a SIEM only, but it's about having some sort of automated ways, proactive measures in order to help your security team or cyber ops team or whatever you want to call it, in order to identify threats in an early stage through like CTI, threat hunting, and so on. So real-time threat detection and proactive monitoring are very critical for identifying suspicious activity, security vulnerabilities, and so on. We can leverage solutions like SIEM and EDS and even cloud-native monitoring tools that most of them are provided through these cloud security providers or vendors. They can enable organizations to correlate security events, analyze CTI or threat intelligence, and respond swiftly to security incidents. So we can also implement automated incident response workflows. If you are familiar with SOAR solutions, the security orchestration and automation response tools, they can help you build automated workflows alongside your threat hunting exercises, or let's say red team, blue team simulations, or purple teaming will generally help the organization, especially in terms of multi-cloud activities. I mean, yes, it is quite different in terms of the tools that you might use as a penetration tester or as a SOC analyst and so on. It is a bit different, but the principles are very similar to on-premise infrastructures. This will help you reduce the dwell time of adversaries, and it will also help your team improve their detection and response capabilities. Now, automation, like I said, for security operations. So automating security processes such as vulnerability scanning, patch management, ER, digital forensics, or DeFire in general enhances the operational efficiency. It will also help reducing the human error, because believe me, sometimes I have worked in different security operation centers. Sometimes the error is in the human themselves. So even the security analyst, as an example, I mean, no offense, guys, some SOC analyst level 1, they are the ones who might receive the first alert when an incident happens. I mean, you are all familiar with it. Sometimes, due to their lack of competence or lack of skills and so on, they might not identify a legitimate alert from a false positive alert. So this might bring an issue. So that's why we use this automation in terms of security ops or SecOps, while ensuring the consistent enforcement, of course, in terms of security policies or the overall GRC, the governance, risk management, and compliance. We have the practice of DevSecOps. I mean, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with it. So this practice will promote the integration of security controls into the software development lifecycle alongside the SSDLC, the Secure Software Development Lifecycle, while enabling organizations to build secure yet resilient applications. We also have infrastructure as a code, and their configuration management tools, they will facilitate the automated deployment, configuration, and enforcement of these security controls. Now, as an example, since I'm a founding president of OWASP Algiers and a global member of the OWASP Foundation, I gotta point out to some of the OWASP resources, the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, CNAS Top 10 project, or the Cloud Native Application Security Project. So running applications in cloud doesn't really change security, except that the infrastructure that the app is running on is generally owned by a third party and shared with other businesses and organizations. So that's why a team from the OWASP Foundation came up with the top 10 risks in terms of cloud native application security, because cloud is not only about architecture or engineering, it's also about networking, storage, software development, applications, and so on. So this list, for your information, is still currently under development. The last update was made in July 2021. But I will try to make some references here. As an example, we have the first risk, CNAS1, insecure cloud container or orchestration configuration. As an example, the publicly open cloud storage buckets. As an example, the S3 of Amazon as an example. We have the injection flows in the second place, application layer, cloud events, cloud services, such as injection flows. It is very similar to the web top 10. All of you are familiar with it. So we can name a few like SQL injection, NoSQL injection, XML external entities, or even the serverless event data injection or command injection in general. We also have improper authentication and authorization. As an example, the unauthenticated API access on a microservice. API, as you know, the application programmable interface. They bring some other challenges in terms of cloud, because most of these cloud solutions are, let's say, in their nature, they work based on different API calls. So this is important as well. We have on the fourth position, CI/CD pipeline and software supply chain flows, or we can say SCRM, the supply chain risk management. So this brings a whole nother subject. As an example, the insufficient authentication on CI/CD pipelines, the use of untrusted images, or even the use of a single environment to run CI/CD tasks for projects requiring different levels of security, which will bring other challenges in terms of access control and so on. In the fifth place, we have insecure secrets storage. As an example, API keys or passwords stored in an unencrypted form inside a container, as an example, in terms of Docker, Kubernetes, or the others. We also have hard-coded application secrets or the poorly encrypted secrets. Now, in the sixth position, we have the over-permissive or insecure network policies. As an example, no network segmentation is defined, or no end-to-end communication is defined, and so on. Now, in the seventh position, we have using components with known vulnerabilities. So it is very simple. It's about vulnerable third-party open source packages, vulnerable versions of application components, libraries, DLL files as an example, and the use of known vulnerable container images and so on. We also have in the eighth position, improper assets management. So it's about, as an example, obsolete or unmanaged cloud resources, microservices, or undocumented APIs. And then we have inadequate compute resource quota limits. This is in terms of resource inbound containers. And lastly, the ineffective logging and monitoring of different activities and microservices, APIs, and so on. So what the OWASP Foundation generally says in terms of cloud security, running applications in the cloud doesn't really change security, except that the infrastructure that the app is running on is owned by a third party and shared with other businesses. So a simple list of things that developers should be thinking about while building a solution in the cloud. I'm going to name a few. If there is a cloud management dashboard, make sure that you enable 2FA or the two-factor authentication, or let's generalize and say MFA, multi-factor authentication. you can also think about the network topology and the design that the network is running through its architecture, preferably with micro-segmented architectures. And then we will talk about the ZTA, the zero trust, and the ZTNA, the zero trust network architecture. You gotta also make sure that there is an audit trail for deploys and changes in terms of change management. Check the cloud provider security pages. I mean, most of these cloud providers, especially AWS, I'm a huge fan of, by the way, of Amazon Cloud. And the way that they present these things, they make it in a very informative way. So make sure that you check their security page in terms of compliance requirements and so on, so you can have an idea about what your cloud security provider is capable of. Do all other security activities as if the app was hosted on like an on-premise system. So do your SSDLC, do your VAPT, do your vulnerability assessment, do your penetration test, your code review, your system hardening, and all of these different things that we are all used to do in other, let's say, classic on-premise infrastructures. Okay, now there is another list made by OWASP, the OWASP Cloud Top 10 Risk. I mean, the other one was about cloud native applications. Now it is about cloud top 10 risks. I'm gonna just pass by it just rapidly. This is an official list. We have the risk 1 or R1, accountability and data risk, user identity federation, regulatory compliance, like we said, business continuity, and even resiliency. The user privacy, this is important as well, and secondary usage of data, the service and data integration, multi-tenancy, physical security, incident analysis, and so on. Now, some of the cloud security references that I want to share with you tonight, or today, sorry, and I would like that you will take a look at them once we finalize this conference. We have the Cloud Architecture Security Cheat Sheet by OWASP Cheat Sheet Series. It is a simple cheat sheet that will discuss common and necessary security patterns to follow technically when creating and reviewing cloud architecture. Now, in the same subject, there is another article or another reference that is very, very professional level, made by the CISA, or the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency of the United States, alongside the USDS and the FedRAMP and so on. They named it the Cloud Security Technical Reference Architecture, and I believe the last update was made in June 2022. We also have the Cloud Security Alliance, because in most times when we talk about cloud and security, you gotta mention the CSA, the Cloud Security Alliance. It's a non-profit global organization as well, similar to other organizations. They have the CCM, the Cloud Controls Matrix, and they have the CAKE, the Consensus Assessment Initiative Questionnaire, alongside some other risk management in terms of cloud security tools and other compliance stuff that might help you implement, manage, and grow your security posture in terms of cloud or even multi-cloud architecture. Now, some of the challenges that we face in securing these multi-cloud environments. Now, despite the benefits of multi-cloud adoption, organizations face numerous challenges in securing these environments effectively. So, like we said in the beginning, maintaining visibility and control, especially across these cloud providers, for instance, proves to be a daunting task due to differences in monitoring capabilities and logging formats. So this will bring an issue and the challenge with interoperability and integration challenges. They will further complicate matters even to the best of us. So requiring standardized protocols and compatibility testing in order to ensure seamless security operations. So managing this complexity and consistency emerge as a common theme as organizations grapple with the complexities of managing security configurations, compliance requirements, and governance policies. Like you see here as an example, organizations might need centralized management and orchestration tools that provide a unified view of their multi-cloud infrastructures. We can take advantage of some of some dedicated cloud security solutions like CSPM, the Cloud Security Posture Management, or even the CASPs that got very familiar in the last years, the Cloud Access Security Brokers. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we can take advantage of SOAR platforms in order to help our organization gain visibility, automate tasks, and detect these misconfigs and compliance violations. Now, the security in multi-cloud brings other challenges. As an example, like we mentioned, the interoperability and integration challenges, because these security solutions, they ensure interoperability between cloud platforms, but it is very different. I mean, a solution might be, let's say, compatible with Google Cloud, but not compatible with Microsoft Azure, as an example. So this is an issue through these security products and third-party services. So that's why they require standardized protocols, open APIs, and so on. So these organizations, or let's say key leaders in cloud security and other fields, have came up with some security tools while requiring the vendor neutral solutions, such as open standards like SAML. Some of you probably are familiar with it, security assertion markup language, or the OAuth philosophy or methodology, the OpenID Connect. All of these things will facilitate secure authentication and data exchange between the different cloud service providers or cloud platforms. Now, we also have the cross-cloud security framework. As an example, the CSA, again, the Cloud Security Alliance, like we mentioned, they have the CCM, the Cloud Controls Matrix, but at the same time, they developed something, I believe, called OSCAL, the Open Security Controls Assessment Language, which will provide a common framework and assessment methodologies in order to evaluate security controls across multiple CSPs. Now, at the same time, the audit and business process. I mean, this is another issue because many times customers have the audit requirements regarding their IT systems. Now, the necessity for the same can be on the customer because of the legal environments they might be in, or it can be from the cloud service provider themselves because of the policies adopted by them. So the need for the same is very required at the moment, so that the customers have the visibility on the documented results for any verification and to point out at the same time the certain issues that might need to be worked upon by the CSP. So some of these standards and regulations, as an example, we have the SOC 1, SOC 2, Type 2, SOC 3 reports. Some of you might be familiar with them, the Service Organizational Controls reports, the NIST SP 892, or the National Institute for Standards and Technology Special Publication number 882, it's a guide to computer security log management. It also helps in terms of bringing a standardized process for log management across multiple cloud service providers. We have the FHER, the HL7 fast healthcare interoperability resources. They might help with different interoperability and integration challenges and issues. So we do have some resources that we can base on. We also have another thing to take into consideration, the administration of role identities and people, because like some of you might already know, in cloud platform, while performing certain tasks, the data is taken care by a lot of people, and it's in the best interest for the customer to ensure whether the person has been authorized to do so or not. So the main task of this security is, or security standard and control, is to give access to data only to the ones who have been authorized to execute a specific task. I mean, in this phase, it is quite similar to other on-prem systems. We can base on information security management standards, such as the 27002 with its ISMS controls, or the 27017, which describes some controls for providers and so on. So moreover, it also needs to be made sure by the customer that the service provider is certified to these standards. I'm not going to argue with you about the benefits of being compliant to such standards, but it shows very advantages, to clients and other business partners and so on, or the stakeholders in general. So for people performing roles for the customers, it needs to be made sure that they have to identify as well as to authenticate themselves while using these cloud services like SaaS solutions. I mean, software as a service or platform as a service, or whatever you want to call it, like XaaS, everything as a service. So here we will need strong controls in terms of identity and access management. Another thing to take into consideration is the security of data and information. So while we are talking about cloud security standards, the most vulnerable to security hacks is obviously data. Information turns into data and data turns into business, obviously. So the proper approach to safeguarding the data is the approach of data governance. Opting for data governance approach helps organizations in managing, protecting, and leveraging information, which in turn helps them to gain confidence in the business decisions and the business objectives. So the majority of standards are taken into consideration while opting for security of data, like the series of 27,000, whether it's 1, 2, or whatever, or the other one of 27,040 with its edition, like as an example of 2015. We have also privacy standards. This is very, very important because protecting personal information is termed as privacy. So it relates to the collection and storage and use of PII and PHI. So the personally identifiable information and personal health information as an example. So to counter the breaches related to the private data, many countries have brought upon the laws such as the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union. While working on the cloud platform, many times personal information is asked for, so to execute a certain task for sure. So every individual who's putting up any of his or her on a cloud channel must take into account the importance and seriousness of this data. Because as we all know, any hack of that cloud channel can be on a such occasion lead to some loss even for that individual. So protection of personal information, there are some standards that might help you, like the CSA PLA, the Cloud Security Alliance Privacy, I believe, level agreement. Yeah, there is also the 29,100 and 151, the 27K18, and so on. These can help you in order to do your PDCA lifecycle, to plan, do, check, and act, in order to implement these standards, to act upon them, to check their effectiveness, and then in order to do continuous improvement, to always make sure that your systems are up to date. So securing cloud networks also is similar because there are some network standards that are being taken into consideration by these cloud security providers, such as the ISO 27033, 1, 2, 3, 201, and the others. So another important aspect is the evaluation of security infrastructure, because in many cases, infrastructure and facilities are provided by CSPs. So customers need to assure themselves from the providers that proper security measures are taken by them. It is in the better interest of the customer to always opt for that particular service provider who is in compliance, as an example with the ISO 27001, as an example, just to name a few. So because this or these standards and regulations and compliance things, they assure you as a client or as a business or as a partner and so on, that there are some certain serious security controls in place, such as the physical infrastructure and facilities should be held in secure areas. I'm naming a control from the list of 27,002 2022 update for implementing ISMS. There is also the equipment security controls, control security of cabling, and so on. So this will bring some sort of assurance for businesses and cloud service providers, of course. And also there is another important thing, which is the terms and conditions in cloud agreement. I mean, you can name it in terms of SLAs, SLRs, and so on. So service level requirements, service level agreements, and so on, in terms of the key features and consideration for roles and responsibilities, contractors, data protection, its residency, and so on. And finally, the exit process is very important as well, because it is very similar to what HR processes do in terms of information security, the exit process of certain employees. We do have something similar in multi-cloud or cloud in general, which we call it the exit process. So the agreement ends with the service provider for sure, or when the service of a particular CSP is ended. So it needs to be made sure that the exit process is properly followed, which include achieving of the right to be forgotten in terms of data and information. So to simplify, which means that the service provider has to ensure that none of the information is kept within their infrastructure or within their cloud environment. So the customer also needs to ensure that the data is extracted in a very secure and appropriate way. Some various security controls that a company should be using, some of the advices that I want to share. Security architecture. So it is very important to know as to what is the security parameter of the CSP. It should be also considered as to how much secured it is, as an example from the firewalls, as well as to virtual machines, to containers, to applications, and so on. The identity and access management, I mean, I have made it obvious through this presentation slides that EAM is very important. So having an identification and authorization, let's say, framework is very needed for a cloud solution, so that only proper people should be having access to certain assets, certain technology, or certain information as a whole. Data protection is important, and compliance as well. Now, like we said, managing these complexities and consistencies is very complex. It's really hard in terms of management. So complexity of managing these security configs, requirements, governance policies, and so on is really a pain to even chief information security officers, chief information officers, I mean CISO, CIO, CDO, CROs, you call it whatever you want. So CSPM solutions, they help in these things. Cloud security posture management. They help with automated remediation workflows. They also help in terms of making these complexities more easier in terms of configs, governance, compliance requirements, and so on, alongside PAC frameworks or policy as a code. This helps organizations to enforce their security standards. We also have the DevSecOps practices that we highlighted recently. They help promote collaboration between the different stakeholders, departments, and teams, from the development team to the operations to the security teams, which will enable organizations to integrate effective security controls into the SSDLC, and achieve continuous compliance. So our platforms and solutions and products will also help in terms of streamlining incident response processes and, let's say, detection and response capabilities. Now, case studies and examples. Some of these, the examples that you will see here are anonymized because due to the, the NDA contracts and so on, but we will try to shed some light. So some successful implementations of multi-cloud security, because some of you might fear these multi-cloud strategies. You will be feeling like, oh, this sounds like really tough, really complex, really hard, but trust me, too many organizations manage to do it successfully. So several organizations have implemented these strategies successfully in terms of their digital assets protection, while ensuring their own regulatory compliance, which is different, like we mentioned, from a country and a region to another. So some case studies from leading enterprises in various industries, such as finance and technology and healthcare, showcase some best practices, innovative solutions, and most importantly, the lessons learned from real-world deployments. As an example, a global financial services company based in the, let's say, Europe, they implemented a multi-cloud security framework, leveraging different aspects such as network segmentation, best practices in terms of cryptography and encryption, and even threat intelligence through their SOC teams and CERT teams, their Security Operations Center and Computer Emergency Response teams, in order to protect the sensitive customer data, and at the same time meeting regulatory requirements such as PCI DSS, the ISO 27001, the GDPR, and so many others. Another healthcare organization in the United States deployed a cloud-native security control. They also automated their threat detection and incident response in order to ensure the EHRs, the electronic health records, and their medical imaging data in hybrid cloud environments. So it is possible. Now, in terms of lessons learned from real-world scenarios, analyzing these notable security, let's say, incidents, data breaches, and compliance failures, these case studies underscore the importance of implementing these critical security measures that are tailored, of course, to the unique requirements of multi-cloud deployments, while also achieving the business objectives and meeting the client needs. Now, some future trends and considerations that I want to shed some light to for you guys, so you can have a probable idea. But either way, this is not sure, this is not official because it's about the future. لا نعلم الغيب. So we do not know what we do not know. So these are just some of the expected trends and considerations that you or that could be worth your time in order to search and advance on. I mean, I cannot reference myself to these because these are extracted from global case studies and global reports, so you can take them into your consideration. So we have, as we gaze into the future of this multi-cloud security, emerging technologies, and this threat landscape which shapes our journey ahead, cloud native security controls and AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, they all offer promising avenues for enhancing threat detection, incident response capabilities, but at the same time, they can also be used by cyber criminals, cyber attackers, in order to breach and, let's say, make our strategies fail in terms of cybersecurity. Additionally, the Zero Trust architecture, or the ZTA principles, they emphasize continuous verification and least privilege access, empowering organizations to proactively secure their infrastructures. So, amidst the evolving threat landscape, scalability and adaptability remain critical considerations, driving these organizations to embrace scalable security solutions that can withstand dynamic workloads. So, these cloud security vendors are developing some sort of innovative solutions to address these advanced persistent threats or evolving threats as a whole. They automate SecOps or security operations while enhancing CTI sharing, the cyber threat intelligence sharing, through, like we know, different standards like the STIX and TAXI and so on, among these cloud security providers. It is very similar to what we used to do in terms of on-premise systems, like across financial services. We have the FS ISACs. They help in terms of sharing this CTI information and valuable threat intel in order to proactively protect our infrastructure. So the same thing is happening between these cloud security, cloud service providers, I mean. So for example, there is another solution called the CWPPs, or the Cloud Workload Protection Platforms. They help by leveraging AI-driven threat detection, behavior analysis, and anomaly detection in order to identify and mitigate advanced threats that are targeting our cloud applications, as an example. And we can also use these, let's say, recent XDR solutions, the extended detection and response that these leaders in the world have been making recently, because they adapt even to cloud architectures and cloud infrastructures. Like we said, zero trust security frameworks might help emphasize continuous verification, less privilege, and also micro segmentation to prevent lateral movements and reduce the attack surface, which will help us in ASM, the attack surface management, especially in terms of multi-cloud environments. So looking ahead, what can you expect? We have a very evolving threat landscape. So as cyber threats become more sophisticated, we have seen very advanced supply chain attacks. As an example, the XZ supply chain attack that happened just recently, a couple of weeks ago. We have also seen campaigns of RAS services, ransomware as a service, especially in deep web and dark web forums and platforms, and even data manipulation attacks. So CTI platforms, threat hunting exercises, purple team simulations help organizations to stay ahead of these threats, and especially the APT groups. So proactive threat hunting and TI or CTI sharing will greatly enable organizations in terms of detection and response capabilities. So in terms of scalability and adaptability, like I mentioned, scalable and adaptable SEC solutions can scale with the growth of multi-cloud deployments. So these deployments adapt to changing business requirements for sure. By integrating seamlessly with existing infrastructure is very essential for the organization long-term success. So cloud-native security controls, container security platforms, and even serverless security frameworks will help enable organizations to build resilient infrastructures. We also have another point of automated scaling, elastic load balancing, and so on, which is very let's say very famous in terms of the leading CSP providers or the cloud service providers. So they can help you as well in terms of dynamic policy enforcement, automated scaling, and so on, which will help your organization maintain a good security posture and performance as well, so you can make your CTO proud in response to fluctuating workloads and traffic patterns for sure. So a quick conclusion to summarize our conference for today, since time is very limited on my side. In conclusion, securing multi-cloud environments and these architectures will demand a very comprehensive and holistic approach encompassing the different points and highlights that we mentioned, like access controls, encryption, monitoring, and even automation, and most importantly, collaboration. So by embracing these best practices and let's say standards and so on, and staying abreast of emerging trends, these organizations or these companies can navigate these complexities that we have uncovered together in terms of multi-cloud landscape with very good confidence. So as let's say cybersecurity practitioners in general, it's incumbent upon us to remain vigilant and adaptive and also proactive in safeguarding these digital assets, because it's our responsibility after all. But luckily, it's not only ours, because cybersecurity is the responsibility of everyone. So by addressing the unique challenges of multi-cloud security and, like I said, implementing these best practices will help align our business objectives alongside mitigation of cyber risks in a very effective way. So some key points to remember include the importance of visibility and control, the need for interoperability and integration, and also, like I said, the value of automation and collaboration. Also, in terms of importance for collaboration, because it is super important to let's say to motivate your different stakeholders, including IT teams, security professionals, cloud providers, and even the regulatory bodies. It is very crucial for developing these security strategies, whether at a national level or a company or organizational level, and so on, by sharing, as an example, threat intelligence and fostering the culture of continuous improvement. Like for myself, the PDCA methodology runs in my veins, as an example. So by fostering partnerships and information sharing, these organizations can collectively strengthen their security resiliency in terms of multi-cloud ecosystems. Now, some recommendations for securing these environments effectively. Organizations must and should prioritize security hygiene, invest in advanced security technologies like we have seen, CASP brokers, CSPM, CWPPs, and so on, and by cultivating a security-first mindset by staying abreast of these threats and trends. So by adopting a proactive and adaptive approach in terms of cybersecurity strategy, especially in multi-cloud, organizations can navigate these complexities in a very good way. So some key recommendations include, like we said, implementing of different EM practices, cryptographic best practices, monitoring, automation, and so on, and also collaborating with industry peers, security experts, as you guys are doing in the SecurityCon event. You can collaborate together, you can come up with solutions, you can play CTFs, you can ask questions, turn to each other and help each other grow and advance in this industry. So thank you for listening, everyone. I hope that it was an insightful discussion. Due to the limited time, I cannot stay right now. I'm very sorry. So if you have any other question, make sure to drop me a message in LinkedIn, or you can go to Fuad Saidi. He has all my types of contact information, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or the others. So welcome anytime you want. So thank you, everyone, for hosting me, and I hope you have a very wonderful event in Tunisia.